Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're tackling a question almost everyone has asked themselves at some point. Who am I?
Ah, yes, the self.
Exactly. We all have that inherent sense of me, but where does it come from?
Hmm. Well, today we're going to dig into some fascinating research from the world of neuroscience to see if we can find some answers.
Love it. So we're going beyond philosophy and diving straight into the brain.
That's right. And what we're finding is that the self isn't just a single thing.
Really?
It's more like it's built in
Oh,
layers.
layers. Like an onion.
Uh-huh. You could say that. Each layer adds a bit more complexity to who we are.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these layers. Where do we even begin?
Well, we start with the most basic layer. It's called the proto-self.
The proto-self.
Yeah. Think of it as the raw feeling of simply existing. Before thoughts, before memories. Just pure beingness.
Okay, so like a newborn baby.
Exactly. Just pure potential before any stories or labels get attached.
I see. So we start with this basic sense of being. But how do we go from just existing to actually experiencing the world as a self?
That's where the core self comes in. This layer emerges through interaction with the world.
Interaction.
Think about, let's say you're picking a ripe strawberry.
Okay, I can picture that.
You've got the feeling of the sun on your skin, the scent of the strawberry.
And the taste.
Right, the taste. But there's also your hand reaching out, your eyes focusing.
Ah, so it's not just about sensing the world passively. It's about our bodies actively engaging with it.
Exactly. And that's a key part of how we start to feel like a separate self. We're experiencing these sensations. We're the ones reaching for the strawberry.
Okay, so we've got this embodied sense of self interacting with the world. But what about the me with a personal history? The me with hopes and dreams and all that?
That's where the autobiographical self comes in.
Ah, I see. So this is where our memories and relationships and aspirations all come together.
It's like a story that's constantly evolving, a tapestry woven from all your experiences.
But our memories aren't always fixed, right? Like sometimes we look back on something and our perspective has totally changed.
That's the amazing thing about the autobiographical self. It's not static.
What do you mean?
Well, it's constantly being edited, scenes are rearranged, emphasis shifts. It's not just what happened, but the meaning we give to those events.
So we actually have some agency in crafting our own stories.
Absolutely.
This is fascinating. But how does the brain actually keep track of all this? Is there like a specific brain region responsible for weaving together this complex sense of self?
Well, it's not quite that simple.
Oh.
There's not a single self area.
Hmm.
It's more like an orchestra, with different sections contributing their expertise.
I like that analogy.
One key player is the thalamus.
Oh, yeah, the thalamus. Isn't that the relay station for sensory information?
Exactly. It's perfectly positioned to receive input from all over the brain, so it gathers all those pieces together.
So it's not just relaying sensory data, it's actually playing a role in creating our sense of self.
It could very well be.
What would happen if we didn't have a thalamus? Could other parts of the brain compensate?
That's a really interesting question. The thalamus plays a crucial role in how we experience the world.
Right.
And without it, I think our ability to process sensory information and build a sense of self would be really messed up.
Wow. So it's really that crucial. But you mentioned other parts of the orchestra. What other brain regions are involved in this self-symphony?
Well, there are these areas called convergence-divergence regions, or CD regions for short.
CD regions.
Yeah, think of them like a vast library in your brain, storing all your memories and emotions.
So they take the raw data from the thalamus and start to create meaning.
Exactly. They help to weave your unique story.
Wow, the brain is amazing. Are there any other key players in this orchestra?
Well, we have a bit of a wild card, the claustrum.
The claustrum.
It's this thin sheet of neurons tucked away deep inside the brain. It's got connections everywhere, but we're still not entirely sure what it does.
Oh, a little brain enigma. So what makes scientists think it might be involved in the construction of self?
It's the connections. It's connected to pretty much every part of the cortex. So it could be integrating information from all these different sensory and cognitive domains.
So it could be like a master conductor subtly influencing the whole orchestra.
Possibly. But there's one more region that seems to play a starring role,
Okay, who's the star of the show?
the posterior medial cortex, or the PMC.
PMC. Got it. And why is this region so important?
Well, it receives input from and sends signals to areas involved in sensory processing, memory, emotion.
So it's like the conductor of the self-symphony, bringing all those elements together?
That's a great way to put it.
So how did researchers even figure out that the PMC might be involved in self-construction?
It was a combination of things. Brain imaging studies show increased activity in the PMC when people think about themselves.
Interesting.
And we also see that damage to the PMC can have a big impact on someone's sense of self.
So, like, real-world cases and brain imaging all pointing to the PMC as being pretty crucial.
Exactly.
But you mentioned that its activity fluctuates. When does it become more active, and when does it kind of quiet down?
That's a great question. And it leads us to another important part of the orchestra,
Yeah.
the default mode network.
The default mode network. What's that?
Think of it as your brain's inner world setting.
Inner world setting.
Yeah, it's a network of brain regions, including the PMC,
Hmm.
that become more active when our minds wander, when we're daydreaming, reminiscing, contemplating the future.
So when we're lost in thought, our brains aren't actually inactive. They're just focused on internal stuff.
Precisely. And here's what's fascinating. When we shift our attention outward to engage with the external world, activity in the default mode network goes down.
Hmm.
But the moment we return to our inner world, thinking about ourselves, our experiences, the network ramps right back up again.
So our brains are constantly switching between these two modes, internal and external.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
And the PMC seems to play a key role in both.
It's like it's this bridge between who we are in our minds and how we experience ourselves in the world.
You got it.
This is incredible. But sometimes this delicate balance can be disrupted, right?
That's right. And that's what we'll be exploring in part 2 of this deep dive.
Okay, so where were we? Yes, disruptions to consciousness. I'm really curious to hear more about these conditions where this delicate balance gets thrown off.
Well, one really interesting example is something called akinetic mutism.
Akinetic mutism. Never heard of it.
It's a rare condition, usually results from damage to certain areas of the brain.
Okay.
And it can be really striking because the person is awake. They're aware. They're completely unresponsive.
Their minds might be working, but they're trapped.
Yeah, it's like they can't communicate or interact with the world.
That must be terrifying. What do we know about what's happening in the brain in those cases?
Well, it's complicated, and researchers are still trying to figure it all out. But in some instances of akinetic mutism, it seems like the core self, those basic feelings and sensations, might still be intact.
Really?
It's that the connection between that core self and the ability to act, to communicate, has been severed.
So they might be aware, experiencing the world, but just completely unable to express themselves. Heartbreaking.
It is, and it really highlights how fragile consciousness can be.
You also mentioned another condition, post-seizure epileptic automatism, right? Does that also disrupt consciousness?
Yeah, so this one can occur after an epileptic seizure. The person might go through a period where they're moving around doing things, but they're not consciously aware of what they're doing. They don't have control over their actions.
So their bodies are functioning, but their conscious selves are offline. It's like in both of these conditions, there's this disconnect between different brain regions, as if the conductor has lost control of the orchestra.
I like that analogy. And it points to just how important coordination is for consciousness. If those communication pathways break down, the sense of self can become fragmented or even lost completely.
It is kind of frightening to think about how easily things can go wrong. But you also mentioned some examples where the brain shows incredible resilience, right?
Oh, absolutely. The brain is remarkably adaptable, even in the face of some pretty serious challenges.
Like what? Give me some hope here.
Well, let's think back to Alzheimer's disease. It's a devastating condition that severely impacts memory and cognitive function.
Right.
But in some cases, even with severe damage to the PMC, which is a hallmark of Alzheimer's, other brain areas can actually step in and allow for a degree of conscious awareness to persist.
So even with all that damage, there are cases where the brain finds a way to compensate.
Yes, it's like the brain rewires itself, finds new pathways to keep that spark of consciousness alive.
That's really remarkable. And it's not just in Alzheimer's, right? You mentioned people recovering from comas.
That's right. As people start to emerge from a coma, one of the key changes we see is increased activity in the PMC.
So the PMC is like reawakening.
Exactly. It seems to play a vital role in that restoration of consciousness.
The PMC really is the star of the show when it comes to the self. But these discoveries raise so many big questions, like if our sense of self is so closely tied to these physical structures in the brain, what does that mean for our understanding of free will, of who we are?
Those are big questions, ones that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. And now neuroscience is starting to provide some really interesting insights.
It makes you think, like, if damage to a specific brain region can change our sense of self, Does that mean our choices are all just a product of neural activity?
It's a mind-bending thought, isn't it?
It is. Are we really just passengers in the vehicles of our brains?
That's a tough one. And I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
I mean, our biology undoubtedly shapes who we are and how we make decisions, but there's also this very real feeling of agency, of being in control of our lives.
Like we're walking this tightrope between what our brains are wired to do and our own sense of free will.
I think that's a great way to put it. And that tension, that mystery, is what makes the study of consciousness so fascinating.
Absolutely. So we've gone from understanding the basic building blocks of the self to considering the very nature of consciousness and free will. What a journey.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
I know. It's incredible to think about how much is happening inside our heads all the time, things we just take for granted.
It is. But the more we learn about the brain, the more we realize just how complex and amazing it really is.
I'm already eager to learn more. But before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners who are now probably just as fascinated by the mysteries of the brain as we are?
You know, the most important thing is to stay curious. Read books, listen to podcasts, have conversations.
Engage with the world.
Yes.
Mm.
And pay attention to your own experiences. The brain is constantly learning and adapting. The more we understand about how it works, the more we can harness its power to shape our own lives.
That's a great point. Understanding our brains gives us a whole new perspective on ourselves and the world around us.
And maybe even the power to change both.
Wow. Now that's a powerful thought to end on. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this incredible topic.
We have. But I hope this has sparked some curiosity in you, dear listener. As we wrap up, I just want to leave you with this cite section. Take some time to reflect on your own experiences. Think about those moments that took your breath away, the relationships that have shaped you, the memories that make up your story.
Ask yourself, what makes you, you? What stories has your brain woven to create this unique sense of self?
Because ultimately, that's what this exploration is all about, understanding what it means to be human.
Beautifully said. Well, until our next deep dive, keep those minds curious and stay engaged with this amazing world both inside and out. It really is mind-blowing when you stop and think about it. All these processes happening inside our heads all the time, and we're just going about our day.
It is. And you know, it makes you wonder, what happens when those processes don't work quite right? We talked about conditions like akinetic mutism,
Right.
but there's so many other altered states of consciousness that could teach us a lot about the self.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we tend to think of consciousness as this all or nothing thing, like you're either conscious or you're not.
Right.
But what about all the in-between states, like when we're sleeping or dreaming, even hypnosis?
Exactly. Those states give us a unique glimpse into how the brain works. Like take dreaming, for example. During REM sleep, when we have those really vivid dreams, the PMC actually shows decreased activity.
So that's maybe why our sense of self can feel so different in dreams. We can fly, we can talk to animals. Sometimes it's like we're not even ourselves.
Right, and it makes you question what's real and what's not. If our sense of self could be so easily manipulated in dreams, what does that say about our waking consciousness?
It's like maybe our sense of self in everyday life is just another kind of creation of the brain.
A controlled hallucination,
Oh.
almost.
Whoa. That's a trippy thought.
It is. And it shows just how much we still don't understand about consciousness.
Yeah, there's still so much to learn.
But even without all the answers, I think what we've talked about today has been incredibly illuminating.
I agree. We started with these basic layers of self, and now we're questioning the nature of consciousness and reality.
And we've seen how the brain, this incredible 3-pound organ, is behind it all.
I feel like we could talk about this for hours.
Me too.
But unfortunately, we are out of time for today.
We are. But I hope this deep dive has left you with some new questions to ponder.
Because as we've learned today, sometimes the journey is just as important as the destination.
That's right. And on that note, I'd just like to say, never stop being curious.
Keep asking questions.
Keep exploring.
And never lose that sense of wonder about the world and your place in it.
Well said.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep exploring the incredible universe both inside and out.